Hello and welcome to our UWS Alumni Conversation series. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Norman Goodwin, CBE, Chief Executive Adoption Matters, based in England. Now, Norman graduated from the university's Paisley campus in 1979 with a BA in Social Studies, and for over 40 years has worked as a social worker, specifically in childcare. Hi Norman, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, thank you for having this discussion. It sounds quite exciting, so I hope that people will find some interest in what I have to say.
I'm sure they will. We've got some fantastic alumni, and you're one of the first that we've asked to sort of join us in this series where we're having conversations about where alumni have gone to and the kind of careers they've worked in, and some of their experience at the university. So I wonder if we could start by you telling us a bit about your role as Chief Executive, Adoption Matters.
Okay, Adoption Matters is a voluntary adoption agency. It has been in existence as an adoption agency since the late 40s. And I guess that my role over the, I think, 36 years that I've been there has changed quite dramatically, as you would imagine. We cover an area that is effectively the whole of the north of England. We've got about 8 bases that we offer services from, Durham in the north, Leeds, various offices in the northwest. We have about 90 staff and a turnover about £4 million. So my responsibility really is to lead the organisation, to work with my board of trustees to develop the strategy of the organisation. And I think equally importantly, having a role in trying to sort of influence government and influence national policy and legislation in the field of adoption. So it's quite an important role in terms of that personal bit, in terms of managing what is now quite a large organisation, but also that role in trying to develop adoption as an option for children in what is quite different now to what it was in the sort of 80s when I first started. And trying to make adoption as a sort of modern concept that is relevant for children today.
Thanks for that. Sounds like an interesting role, and certainly one that you've had extensive experience doing after all the time. But I wanted to take you back to your school days in Lanarkshire now, and reflecting on some of the choices you made back then, and did you have a career path in mind when you were leaving Wishaw High School, and why Paisley College of Technology as it was at the time?
Well, it's interesting that one of the parts of school was to go and visit some of the sort of universities and things like that when we were looking at our career options. And I went from school to an open day at Paisley College. So that this probably involved a busload of us all going to the Brough Hall in those days. And there were several inputs across the whole day from different faculties, and clearly a couple of things stand out, and one clearly made an impression. But I remember one of the engineering professors doing a very graphic sort of lecture using a golf club. He had a driver on the stage and was sort of using it as a visual aid. And clearly the thing that impacted myself, I think maybe a bit more, was that Betty Robertson led the social science perspective, and at the time she was the head of the psychology section, and that clearly had a sort of influence on me in terms of what was said and the opportunities that were there as part of social science. I don't think I ever had a sort of I'm not sure that I was quite interested in geography and things like that at school, but this was something that I was really quite interested. There used to be a column in the Evening Citizen in Glasgow by a guy called Dr. Balfour Sclair, who sort of, I guess, was sort of offering a sort of medical perspective on people's problems of the day, and I used to enjoy sort of reading that, which is a bit tenuous, but it was a sort of way into the sort of the caring profession. So I think it was something that I was quite interested in doing. So I applied and was accepted to do the social studies degree, which in those days was a 4-year degree. The first 2 years were sort of generic in social studies, and then you opted to do the social work option. And actually another lad from my school, he went and did engineering, so it was quite interesting to turn up in the first day at Paisley, and there was at least 2 of us from Wishaw High School.
And were you first in your family to go to college or university?
Yes, I was. So that was quite a sort of interesting, proud day for my parents in terms of that option.
And what was the campus like at the time? And was there activities you took part in, or was it pretty much just studies?
Well, the answer is that I studied all the time.
Of course it is.
Well, I mean, the campus, I guess, it looks to, when I was last there, it's expanded greatly, and it was more structured within the streets at the time. So a lot of our lectures took place in the Gardner building, which was quite an old building on George Street, but it had a lovely tiered lecture theatres and things like that, which I guess was part of the old college even before it became Paisley College. So the library was sort of just about opening in the new area of Story Street, and that's where most of our sort of seminars and tutorials and things like that took place. I think it was next door to the old swimming baths, which were wonderfully old-fashioned with really big baths that you could go and spend a threepence or something like that, 10p or something, and get a nice bath if you needed to. So yeah, it was a good building to a good sort of campus to be part of. I think there was quite often lots of events. I sort of got involved in various things, and we ran various events on the campus, and you know, I just think I had a good time. I think if you were an engineering student, you probably looked at us social studies students and thought, well, they just come for a holiday, because the number of lectures that we seem to have in a week were about the same as they had in a day. So it was a good time, and I made some good friends through that.
And you mentioned a couple of members of staff already in lectures. Is there any members of staff who had a particular influence on you?
Well, I mean, I guess that when you get to the sort of social work bit, that you're sort of looking at that, and clearly the 2 main lecturers were Morag Faulds and Joyce Minnis. I guess that my sort of passion for the voluntary sector was sort of stimulated by Morag Faulds, because she had been a sort of director in the statutory services in Scotland, but always spoke very passionately about the future of social work being in the voluntary sector. So it was really important to that was an important message that I took on board, I think. And I think that both of those people were very influential in making you feel that this was a worthwhile profession to be a part of, and encouraged you to keep going. And we were only a small group. There were only about 13 or 14 of us, and I think we were the second intake of students that went through the social work or the social work route. So you felt as if you were quite an important little group, and you all sort of worked very well together. And it was, I suppose, one of the really interesting things was that in part of one of our modules was taught by the aforementioned Dr. Balfour Sclair. So it was really interesting to come full circle and meet this person that I had read their columns in the newspaper. So I think that those were some of them. I also remember that I guess that student life sometimes is quite difficult, and a couple of people that I had met very early on just didn't appear in the second term, and that was really disappointing. It was a bit disconcerting at the time in terms of them just not coming back. But I guess that for whatever reason that was the case, and we do know that students do drop out for all sorts of reasons. I suppose that's also one of the things that you might say to other prospective students is to stick at it. It's sometimes time. It does take a little bit of time to adjust to a new regime, new freedoms, new opportunities, but it's also worth sticking at it and seeing it through, even although it might appear a bit difficult at the beginning.
And you did stick at it, and fast forward a few years later, and you graduated. Can you remember the graduation ceremony much? Where was that?
Yeah, it was a very nice sunny day. In the I think it was it was sort of the Abbey and the Town Hall were used in those days, and I've still got some nice pictures of my family, who it was a great sense of pride for them to be part of that day, and I guess also a good opportunity on the day to share with our peers, because as I said earlier, we were quite a small group, so there was a sense of achievement that we'd all come through this module, and that we were all going to be let loose in the world. So yeah, it was very nice ceremony. We all trooped up and trooped round in the very ordered way that you got, and then capped, and sort of the principal, and I guess just a sense of, there was a sense of pride in achieving that, and then taking your gowns back and going to get your photographs done and things like that, which was nice.
And you were eventually let loose, as you say, on the on the world. What was your first experiences of working life, and did you feel prepared for that life from the things you'd learned?
Well, I mean, clearly I had trained as a social worker in Scotland. And I had done all my practice experience, well, most of it in Scotland. I had done one placement in England, but my first job was in Wales, so I sort of then moved to work in Wales, which was slightly different because it was a different legislative structure. Here was me as a 21-year-old able to remove people's freedom under the Mental Health Act at 3 o'clock in the morning, and remove children into the care of the local authority. I think there was a sort of sudden realization that all that theory that you had learned, and whilst you had done practice in your placements, you might have observed some of that, but clearly as a student you weren't allowed to do that in your own right in those days. So when the realization came that this was down to you and you had decisions to make, and then that sort of came, as a bit of a well, I'm not sure it was a shock, but it was a sort of different culture set, really. But I think that a lot of the theory started to make sense when you were actually involved in the practice of doing it. And I certainly valued in those days having a good manager and a good sense of structure around that newly qualified social work status. And I think the profession has improved on that again. I think that for a time, and I know it is difficult sometimes to ensure good management and good structure, but I think the social work profession has worked hard to bring that back. And again, for anybody who's maybe thinking of a career in social work, I think there is a structure in terms of those years where you can get some assistance in your learning as part of a staggered growth into the profession. So I think if somebody is looking at where they might be employed, that might be one of the things that they might want to look at.
And you found your way to Adoption Matters. What was your first kind of roles with Adoption Matters?
Well, I sort of started there as a team manager in what was a very small agency. I think there was only about 10 of us, and I worked there for about 3 or 4 years before I then became what effectively was the chief executive. And I mean, I think in those days, the children that we were placing were fairly straightforward. We did quite a lot of work with local authorities where they were looking to place fairly straightforward children, young, even babies that we were placing. But gradually, or well, certainly within the first couple of years, the number of children that we were looking to place had more needs. They would be deemed today harder to place children, children of challenge, call them whatever you may. But it was really that impetus to try and find families for those children who wait the longest. And actually, ironically, we are still doing that. There are families who come forward to adopt more difficult children now, but there are still some children who wait far longer than they should for various reasons. And the impetus is to try and find families for those. We were working with birth parents, we were working with people who had been adopted, and gradually over the years developed our adoption support much more positively.
And your work has been recognised personally as well, because in 2015 you were awarded a CBE for outstanding contribution and distinguished service to adoption and the family. You must have been really proud of that. What was the experience like, and was that a surprise?
Well, yes. I don't think you ever think that these things will happen. It was a huge surprise, really. To get a very official letter, looks like something from James Bond. And it was really a great day again for my family to go to Buckingham Palace. I had the honour that my investiture was with the Queen, so that was really an honour. I think also the fact that, despite the fact that there were other people there, she seemed to know, you know, a personal bit of information for everybody who was there and took time to talk and ask questions and things like that. So that was a great honour. It's just a shame my parents weren't around to see the end result of that, because I know they would have been very proud.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure your family are proud. And you mentioned coming back to campus, and that was in 2017 to join us for a celebration of 50 years of social sciences in Paisley. What was it like being back, and some of the people you met?
Well, I mean, that was it was a great time. And there was three of us who came back who had all been part of the social science degree, and it was great to come back to the campus to see how it had changed, because clearly I haven't lived in Scotland for a long time, so the number of times that you actually get into the campus, you know, I've sort of passed it a few times but never actually been in, so it's coming in to see how it had changed was really exciting. And I think the other exciting thing was to meet various people that you had seen either online or read about in some of the information that universities send out, but also meeting back up again with a couple of the lecturers that had taught us, which was a bit surreal. Sadly, one of the lecturers was unable to come. I don't think they were very well. So, but it was great to catch up, to reminisce, to think about how things had changed over that period of time. And it was a very nice evening. Also, you know, sort of meeting other members of staff who are there now doing the job. So, and how it had sort of changed.
Mm. And we've obviously spoke about your extensive career in social work. Have you got any words of advice to our new graduates that are coming out into the world of social work?
Well, I think social work is a great profession. I think often it's underestimated. I think it's often misunderstood. Sometimes there's a sense of you're damned if you do and damned if you don't in social work. But I think that sense of making a difference to people, trying to enable people to move ahead, to give them the insights, to give them the confidence to move forward in their journey, I think is great. I think particularly in the area of childcare, to see the difference that you can make for a child, that you give them a much brighter future. I think those are all things that when you look back, you see that you have made a difference. I sense that graduating as a social worker in 2022, which might be the next graduation, will be very different to sort of graduating when I did in 1979. I think that the constraints on local government, the finances, the resources, offer a huge challenge, much different to what there was. I think the opportunities to get underneath some of the practice and feel that you can make a difference for people, if you can get an opportunity to do something around that without the other pressures seemingly pushing you in so far, I think that's a great opportunity. Try and get placements that might equip you for what you might want to do in your career ahead, and get the opportunity to experience that, even if it's to say, well, no, I don't want to do that, but it gives you just an insight. And I think the other thing has been that safe environment really challenges your own personal capacities and just enables you to hopefully to come out at the other end as somebody who's capable of doing the role. And I've never regretted the choice that I've made, so I hope they won't either.
And what's next for Norman? What's next for you, Norman? I know you've been involved in various charities as a trustee, and I know that you're stepping down from chief executive role at Adoption Matters. So is that something you're going to do more of, the trustee work?
Well, yeah, I sort of try and keep involved. People keep telling me that don't make too many decisions about what you're going to do too early in the process. Take a bit of time to reflect and decide what you're going to do. So I'm going to try and take their advice on that. I'm really keen to travel a bit more, although the sort of pandemic might still have an effect on the possibilities of that. I'm going to try and get back to Scotland a bit more, and I certainly do have some plans to get back next year. That we're going to do a circuit of the North Coast 500. That is one of the things that I really want to do. So we've got that booked, and that's in the diary. So that's one thing. But a time with my family, my grandchildren, and I suspect that there will still be things that I might get asked to do. So because I think just keeping the sort of the interest and the keeping your mind active is important, and I still feel as if I've got something to give back, that given the right opportunity, I'm really would be looking forward to getting involved in something.
That sounds great. Well, I hope you'll put our Lanarkshire campus or our Paisley campus on your list of venues to visit before you get on the go. But listen, thanks very much, Norman Goodwin, CBE, Chief Executive of Adoption Matters. I've really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you.